Meanwhile, the CDC says the coronavirus will likely stay beyond this year. The acting Secretary of Homeland Security is a busy fellow these days, Chad Wolf. Secretary, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Neil.
You know, I talked to someone who was on this boat off the coast of Japan who doesn't want to get off, doesn't want to take this plane back to the United States, especially not too psyched about maybe re-quarantined in the United States. Are you running into folks on that ship of a similar mind? They don't want to get off?
No, not particularly. Look, we've put a number of measures in place. President Trump has been very clear. The safety and the security of the American people are first and foremost. So the measures that we put in place several weeks ago, we were the first country to put travel restrictions in place. The 11 airports that were screening individuals, it is working. As you indicated at the top of your segment, there's only 15 cases in the U.S., and that's because of these measures that we put in place. So making sure that we screen all those flights coming from China. Any individual that's been in China in the last 14 days needs to be checked out not only by DHS medical professionals, but also CDC medical professionals. And we're doing that. We're only doing that in the air environment. We're also doing that at maritime ports of entry as well as land ports of entry. So the pressures and the procedures that we put in place are working.
So for those who opt not to take you up on flying back to the United States, one way or the other, they're going to be examined when they get back in the United States, right, whether on this particular jet or other means in the future, right?
That's absolutely correct. So the measures that we have in place are staying in place for the foreseeable future. So whether they come back to the U.S. in the next several days or the next several weeks, they're still going to be medically screened by, again, DHS professionals as well as CDC professionals, and then they'll either be home quarantined in a sense, or they'll be government quarantined by the CDC and local health officials.
If I could switch gears, Secretary, do we know what came of that meeting between the president and New York Governor Andrew CUOMO on settling the sanctuary city issue with the freeze and the entry program in the United States? You know how, or even if it was resolved?
Well, we did have a productive meeting. Both the governor and the president want to find a solution to this. I would like to find a solution to this, but it requires making sure that CBP has access to fully vet the trusted travelers. We do not have access now. New York state law restricted that access or limited that access. So I've been very clear with the governor. I've talked to him several times. We need that access to vet those trusted travelers. And I would say overall, CBP and ICE needs access to the state DMV database for a number of law enforcement, customs, and other related national security reasons. And anytime we're building up walls or silos and information sharing with law enforcement is very, very dangerous. We see a number of states going this route, and we're taking action not only in the form of what we did last week, but also through lawsuits. The Department of Justice is a partner, and we're suing these localities because it's dangerous to public safety, security, and again, it's building up these silos. And what we learned after 9/11 is you need to be able to connect the dots. Law enforcement needs to be able to talk to one another and share information. And when states decide to put up walls between that information, it becomes dangerous.
You know, I'm just curious of why we haven't had a follow-up from this, though, Secretary, because obviously New York wants to remain a sanctuary state for the most part. So are you saying that this would be focused exclusively on those who try to get into this country or get checked and screened when they arrive in this country, and leave it at that?
Well, we're certainly looking at that. Obviously, that's what New York would like to do. I'm also concerned making sure that CBP can do their customs job. So we have CBP officers at ports of entry in New York State, at Buffalo and elsewhere, making sure that they're able to screen vehicles and screen individuals coming into the country. And they use that New York database, DMV database, to do just that. And right now, they cannot screen vehicles coming into the country. So if we seize a car at a port of entry and we find narcotics in it, how do we determine who that owner of that vehicle is? What are their associations? Again, it's connecting that dots and it's sharing that law enforcement information that's critically important to our job. And right now, because of the state of New York passed their law, we're unable to do that.
Are you worried that it boomerangs, though, back on you, sir? Not you particularly, the administration, more to the point that people trying to get in this country, and the U.S., of course, certainly has been an investment haven, to say nothing of just a destination haven, that could be in jeopardy, that this could, whammy us economically?
Look, we want to find a solution with New York, but it requires making sure that we have the ability to do that. So right now, today, New York does not allow us to vet trusted travelers through their database, and that is a security vulnerability, and it jeopardizes the entire global entry as well as 3 or 4 other programs in its entirety. So before I shut down the program across the board, across the country, I don't want to do that. So we had to address the security vulnerability that New York created when they passed this law. And so that's what we've done now. We'll continue to talk with the governor. I'll talk with him again this week, I'm sure, to find a solution. We want to do that. But the precedent that New York has done here, restricting access to CBP as well as to ICE to do their law enforcement mission, puts the New York residents at jeopardy.
Do you know whether the governor and the president, left on good terms? Did it get nasty? What?
No, it was like I said, it was a productive meeting. I was in the meeting. It was a productive meeting, cordial meeting.
Right.
We talked about the issues. We talked about the vulnerabilities that I've outlined here, and we all agreed to go away, come up with a solution, continue that discussion. I think we will find a solution, but we've got to be able to, again, share that information with the law enforcement officers at the Department of Homeland Security so that they can do their job. I'm not willing to cut corners, enroll people in trusted traveler programs that we cannot fully vet.
Secretary, thank you very much for taking the time. We do appreciate it.
Thank you.